Welcome in. It's lovely to see you this afternoon. If you have got your camera on, it'd be lovely to see your faces. Thank you, Jean, for having your camera on. And it's great to have your name and full school as well, so that I can see who we're talking with this afternoon. Up on the screen there, I've got some of the key questions that I'm going to address this afternoon. But if you have further questions, burning questions that you have around appropriate body work, around the assessment process this year, do put them into the chat and I'll make sure that we address them during the session. And we'll also have some time for a bit of Q&A at the end of the session. So welcome, Esther. Hi, Mazana, and your colleague there as well. It's lovely to see you this afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Okay. So I'll introduce myself. I'm Tessa Blair. I'm the Deputy Director of East London Teaching School Hub. And I'm here today in my role as the Appropriate Body Lead. So some of you may know me in relation to my work as the ECF Strategic Lead, so coordinating the Early Career Framework Programme across East London, working with UCL. But today I'm here with my Appropriate Body hat on, and I'm hoping to address the questions there on the board. Are there any questions you have that are not there? Take a moment just to type them into the chat, or you can send them as a direct message through the chat if you want to. I'm interested to see how many people here are year 1 ECTs and how many are joining us in year 2. So I'd love a little show of hands. So can I ask you to give me a wave, please, or use your hand reaction sign to show me if you're a year 1 ECT. Can I have my year 1s? Give me a little wave. Hi, Esther, Mazana. Hi, Laura. Thank you for sharing that. And year 2s, and Sophia, welcome. And year 2s, do we have any year 2s in the room? No. And Jean, I noticed you didn't put your hand up. Can you tell me what your role is?
My role is trying to find out how to use the interactive function of Zoom. I'm year 1. I'm year 1. I was fumbling around too late. Welcome,
Jean. It's really, really good to see you. So the reactions, yeah, they're in different places depending on what kind of device you've got. Have you been able to find them now, Jean? You've also got your camera on, perfect. So you can wave at me, interrupt me if I'm going too fast or things are unclear. Okay, well, let's move on. Millie and Nick, Sophia, Laura and Gurdeep, it's lovely to have you join us this afternoon. Do turn your cameras on if you can. It's nice to see some faces this afternoon rather than those black boxes. So we're going to think about what it means to be an ECT, and there's lots of acronyms, lots of strange terminology around early career teaching. You'll know, you may be aware that there were some significant early career reforms in 2021, so last year, just before you came into the profession, many of you. And so there's lots of new information, new guidance and new structures and things flying around. And so I think it's really important just to clarify that so that you're really clear about things as well. So early career teacher, this should be no surprises for you here, but you may have heard the language of NQT sort of banded around, that's newly qualified teachers. So previously teachers had a 1-year period of induction, you now have a 2-year period of induction. And that includes assessment against the teacher standards. Those teacher standards are the same standards that were used in your ITE to assess your sort of readiness, the recommendation for QTS. It's the same set of standards, a 2-year period. During this 2-year period, you've got an entitlement to a reduction in your timetable. You should have 10% reduction in year 1, and that's in addition to the PPA that you have on your timetable, that preparation, planning and assessment time, and also 5% in year 2. And there's funding for that additional 5% because that's a new initiative from last year. You should have a named mentor, and you should have a weekly mentoring with that mentor in year 1. And in year 2, you'll move towards a sort of fortnightly pattern, around 20 hours of mentoring in year 2. The other key shift in terms of early career programme is that you now have an entitlement to engage in an early career framework-based programme of learning. And you might be doing that in a variety of ways. Most people who are attached to our appropriate body are also working with us on the early career framework programme. So you're working on the programme with UCL, using UCL Extend, engaging the modules with us. Other schools may be doing different routes. Okay, and it's just worth being aware there are different ways to access that framework, but it needs to be based on the early career framework. And what is that? Okay, we talk a lot about this early career framework. I'm really aware that your modules, if you're doing the UCL ECF program, break down the early career framework. And so you may only have seen it in kind of little chunks, but it is a whole framework linked to all the teacher standards, and it maps out the curriculum in terms of the learn that statements and learn how to. So what your professional entitlement to have those opportunities to learn about and learn how to aspects of teaching and practice. And you'll see deliberate overlaps and continuity with your initial teacher education. So with the core content framework, the CCF in your ITE. And that's quite deliberate. And that's because the DFE are moving towards what they describe as this golden thread now of teacher development. So moving through initial teacher education into your early career development. And then we've also got this full suite of national professional qualifications. East London Teaching School Hub leads professional development across Tower Hamlets and Hackney. So we work with all the schools in Tower Hamlets and Hackney to ensure that every teacher has access to this thread of professional learning, so that each stage of their career they've got access to high quality professional development. Who are the appropriate body in all of this? What is an appropriate body? Well, we have two roles. The first thing to be clear about is that schools nominate an appropriate body. Every school that works with early career teachers has to have an appropriate body. We've got two main roles. So the first is in relation to the early career framework. We need to ensure that every ECT has got opportunities to have an ECF-based program of learning. And so we do quality assurance around that. If you're on our program, if you're on a provider-led program, such as the one with UCL, then we know that has got really strong fidelity to ECF. Ofsted have already assessed that and agree that that's a strong program in terms of ECF. So we can do sort of light touch monitoring there. So our main role for most schools and most ECTs we work with is around these assessments against the progress standards. So we monitor those assessments. We look at the recommendations your induction tutors and your head teachers make, and then we make the final decision about whether you've met those teacher standards at the end of your 2-year induction. Who is involved in this process? I'm aware that in schools there are some really key people involved. So through the early career framework-based program of learning, your weekly mentor meetings, your program of learning you're having with them, those modules you're undertaking, you're largely engaged with your mentor. They're the kind of key person that you're working with. And then your induction tutor is coordinating that and ensuring that you have access to that program, that you can attend your sessions, that you have a mentor. They're kind of coordinating that role. But the induction tutor also has a very important role working with the head teacher in relation to your assessment and recommendation against the teacher standards. So our key contact in school will always be your induction tutor. And in terms of the appropriate body assessments, they're the people that have access to ECT Manager, the online platform we use, and they're the people that will make those assessments. So just to be clear about the difference in roles, I'll let you read through this summary. And you can see there's quite a deliberate distinction there between the mentor, who's there to be supportive and really help you in terms of your development, and be in the UCL program we describe it as being on side, to be there in a kind of non-judgmental capacity to support your progress. Whereas the induction tutor has more of a coordinating role, and they're involved in assessment. And that is a very clear separation. The statutory guidance makes it very clear that the same person should not be your mentor and your induction tutor, except in exceptional circumstances. And where there is that overlap in a mentor and induction tutor having the same roles, as an appropriate body, we need to ensure that there are safeguards put in place to ensure that your assessment is a fair one. Okay, so if you have concerns about that or questions about that, it's something we can pick up later on in the session. I've mentioned assessments a couple of times. When do you have them? Well, you've got termly assessments. So you'll have 2 progress reviews, one in autumn and spring this year, and then a formal assessment. And it'll be the same pattern next year. And you should be aware that that first progress review is due to us on the 2nd of December, so in about 10 days' time. These first 2 progress reviews are fairly informal assessments. They're opportunities to review your progress, check in on how you're getting on. And then you'll see, it's clear kind of in the language there, the formal assessment is more of a longer, more substantial assessment about your progress towards those teacher standards. Okay, so there's termly opportunities to review where you're up to. Can I just have a wave and a show of hands again about those people who've already had their conversations with their induction tutors and already sort of started that process of progress review? Lovely to see some hands. Thank you. Oh, great. I've got lots of hands there. Really good to hear that your schools are fully in flow with those. Okay. Hopefully, if your school hasn't started that, or you're not clear about when you're meeting with your induction tutor is, or when you will need to submit your reports, you'll have the information you need to go nudge and remind your colleagues at school by the end of this session. Okay. When we're looking at the assessments, our role is to ensure that they're fair. Okay, we're a moderator in terms of the assessment process. And we've identified these 4 criteria that help us to determine whether it is a fair assessment. I'll let you read that through. Okay, so I think there are some important ideas coming out of this. I mean, the first one, I think that's probably the most important for me, is this second one here about it being agreed. The assessment should come out of a conversation that you're having with your induction tutor. You should be involved in the process. It shouldn't just sort of land on your desk or in your inbox and be the first time you're thinking about your progress this term. Okay, you will have an opportunity to make comments on your experiences of induction and the progress review process as well as part of the process. And I'll show you about that in a moment. So that's really key for me. We're interested to know where you are in terms of your development and what your next steps are, because we think that will help you to take greater ownership of and lead your professional development. We want to get a sense that this is an individualized report, that this isn't a cut and paste job, that your induction tutor really does know you and know what's going on in your classroom and going on with your students. And that they're basing their evidence, they're basing their recommendation around a range of evidence. So it's not just based on one high stakes observation, a kind of very formal observation that perhaps in which you perhaps feel you can't really show them what your practice is like every day, but it's based on a range of practice. So it might be based on conversations they have with your mentor or your subject leaders or heads of department or phase leaders. It might be based on looking at student work, reviewing assessment data, that range of evidence that is there that gives an indication of how things are going for you in your classroom and in your practice. Does anyone have any questions around any of those criteria or what we're looking for? I can't see any questions in the chat, so I'll just give 30 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to move on now to think about what it looks like in practice and how you might prepare for that. The DFE is really clear about the kind of workload implications of this. This is what they say. Okay, so the focus on being streamlined and least burdensome way. okay, drawing on existing documents. So we don't, for example, as an appropriate body, recommend that you collect folders of evidence. For example, you're collecting new materials to inform these reviews, but it's drawing on existing evidence. So I would recommend that if you haven't had those meetings already, or you're thinking about your meetings in the future, these are the types of things you might be prepared to share. And if you're working with us on the ECF-based program of learning with UCL, you can draw on the documents that are part of that program. Okay, so things that might be helpful are the module audits, which obviously review your progress against the teacher standards in terms of the early career framework. And then if you are using your progress tracker and learning log, that's an opportunity for you to identify strengths and areas of development there. Okay, so drawing on existing documents that you're using. Can we just have a couple of suggestions of things other people might draw on? So what types of evidence might you draw on to inform your own assessment of your progress towards teacher standards? We have some contributions in the chats. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 people in our space today. Let's have 11 ideas of things we might draw on to inform our review of our progress. Just pop them into the chat, please. Thanks, Jada, Nick and Jash, our Swanley colleagues, for starting us off. And they've given us 2 ideas. Yeah, Fazana, examples of things you've developed, your planning, resources. Yeah, mentor meeting notes. Thank you, Jean. Katie, so is that your informal experiences? So sort of talking about your experience of mentoring. Sophia, observation notes, absolutely. Esther, assessment data. I don't think we've heard from Nick or Laura. Mazana. Or Mazana's talked about strategies of behaviour management. Yep, so you might be looking at any tracking that's done around behaviour management, so house points or detentions, things like that. Okay, so all these things are things you already have. They're things you're doing as part of your practice, and that is informing your own evaluations of your progress, because really we want you to be involved in this, to be clear about your own development, to be empowered, be part of this process. Okay. The form itself, the progress review, is completed on the platform ECT Manager, and all of you should have logins for that. You'll also get an email link to the report itself, so you can just click straight through to access your reports. If you're having any problem accessing the platform, you can let us know through the help desk feature on the website, and then we can send a reset password, and your induction tutor can do the same. Okay, so let's have a little look at that now. And we're looking at a fictional NQT, so that's the old language of an early career teacher. And you can see this is what it would look like when they log on. Your dashboard, as we call it, will look exactly the same. So you can see there's this big orange box. The tutor's completed your progress review and you can leave your comments. It invites you straight to go in and make your comments. I'm just going to show you a couple of other things on ECT Manager while I'm here. So the first thing to be aware of is there is information submitted by your school around, the training program you're on, your personal details, your contract details, the type of ECF-based program you're on. You can check that to make sure it's all accurate and let us know if there are mistakes. At the bottom here as well, there's summaries for you around, your date of birth, when you started your induction period, your contract, and it tells you about your days of absence and when your reports are due. You can see here, this first progress review, a P for progress review, is due on the 2nd of December. and we're at the point where the ECT should comment. So the tutor has filled in their reports and we're ready to enter our comments now. So let's have a look at that. Oh, let's log in again. Excuse me for a moment. Right, there we go. So here's what it will look like for you. I, as an ECT, am on track. I'm really glad to see that my induction tutor has made the judgment I'm on track. They've got a choice of on track or not on track to meet the teacher standards at the end of the 2 years. And they've confirmed when I start, and they've confirmed when this term ends and how many days I've been working for this term. So I can check that that's right. And then I can go into this review, and you can see here there's some prompts. Okay, so it's an opportunity for you to comment on the process of the review. Does it reflect those conversations? Is it an agreed review? Have you received the full range of entitlements? And you will have noticed in our ECT guidance that we shared in that PDF attached to the email, we outlined those full range of statutory entitlements that you have, and that was outlined at the beginning of the session as well. And then thinking about where you might need further support or developmental guidance. What are your next steps? How are you going to make progress? I can't do it. Once I've added in my comments, etc., I'm just going to write thank you. I can then save that, and then it's really important that it's signed by the tutor in the ECT. Okay, and I can also print a copy for myself to have as in my records. So you can also always access this report, and it is really recommended that you ensure you have got a copy of that report. Okay, so let's go back to those slides. In terms of the ECT comments then, you've seen that you've got those prompt questions, but some pointers for you now. Show that you agree with the report, and if you don't agree with the report, please don't just not write anything. This is your opportunity to tell us that you don't agree. Okay, please record that clearly, because that will flag to us that there is an area of concern to investigate a little bit more fully. Do comment on the support you've experienced. We hope you've been really well supported. We hope you've had that full range of entitlements. If there are any concerns you have, here's your space to let us know. We really like it when we can get a sense of how things are going for you and that you've got a real sense of ownership for your own development. So do tell us what you're most proud of. You know, we hear from the induction tutor, but what are you proud of in terms of your progress? What are your next steps? Do you agree with their areas of development? Are there particular ones you're really focused on? Have you thought about how you're going to achieve those areas identified as areas of development flagged by your induction tutor? What are you actually going to do in terms of the next steps for next term? Going to put this up. It's a really important statement. So what I will say is that most ECTs thrive in their induction. We're really lucky in Tower Hamlets and Hackney. Most ECTs are working in really supportive schools, really good cultures of professional learning and support. And most ECTs, because of the longer period of induction that we now have, that 2 years to make the progress, are very successful in their induction. However, we do need to be mindful that you can only serve one statutory induction. And if you are judged to have failed those, you cannot repeat induction. Okay, and that means you can't then be employed at a relevant school. So whilst hopefully this session has reassured you in terms of the process and kind of how simple it is in terms of it being online, your involvement in it, I also hope you understand the importance of it in terms of your statutory assessment and your right to lawfully work in a school in England. Okay, so some key points here you have got 2 years to make progress towards meeting those teacher standards, and you can't fail at any point before those 2 years. So if there are concerns about your progress, if your induction tutor suggests you're not on track, that's about putting further support in place to help you make the progress you need to be successful at the end of your 2-year induction period. The appropriate body can also make decisions to extend induction if we feel that with a little bit more time, you could make the progress needed. Okay, we would not want any ECT to fail induction. So it's about ensuring there's support in place. We have a rigorous review process. So we talk to your induction tutors and you every term, because we want to ensure there are no surprises. We would hate for any ECT to get to the end of their 2-year period and then be told that they were going to fail. Okay, so there should be no surprises for you. You should be involved in this process, and that will be reviewed every term. If you do need extra support, the induction tutor will work with us to put that support plan in place. Okay, and we always advise, if you have concerns about your progress or you have concerns about the support you're receiving in terms of your statutory entitlements, that you do contact us, and you may also want to be in touch with your trade unions as well, who'll be able to offer guidance, and we work with them as well in the sort of event that an ECT is not making the progress it's expected and is at risk of not passing. Okay. So my last sort of prompts and real message, take-home message, is about the importance of keeping our information up to date. So you've seen on ECT Manager that we collect information about your contract, about the school you're working in, about how many days absence you have. And that's because every ECT needs to undertake 6 terms full-time work. And if you miss days or you start at a different days, obviously your induction will need to change in reflection to reflect that. If you move schools during your induction period, we want to be able to provide accurate information to your next school and your next appropriate body. So it's really important that information is kept up to date. Your induction tutor will check it every term, but you can also check to make sure that that's right. And if there are changes, please let us know, particularly around contracts. So if you go to part-time or you move up to full-time, or if you're planning to move schools, because sometimes that means the type of report that's due is changed, so that we can ensure that you have the best data, the best sort of form of reporting, so that your next school understands how to support you to make continued progress with that. So that's our email address there, and that will be picked up by me as the appropriate body lead, and we can arrange conversations. So I'm going to pause there, and I'm going to ask Anissa to share with you a summary PDF that was enclosed in your email, but just as a sort of reference point, a takeaway of some of the key ideas today. And then I'm going to leave the rest of the session open for colleagues if they've got particular questions around assessment or particular questions around their experiences so far. If you want to check any details with us. So we can pause the recording there as well, Anissa.